What if I told you that Hamilton's biggest problem at Ferrari has not been the car, or even the pressure of being in Maranello? According to Nico Rosberg, it all comes down to a silent clash between two opposing worlds that could define his legacy forever. Do you want to know what that real problem is? It all started with a phrase that seems simple, but hides an uncomfortable truth. Nico Rosberg, in a no-frills interview, said, "Lewis doesn't fit at Ferrari because the car is not made for him." And it never was. The phrase has caused a storm in the paddock, but to understand its full meaning, it is necessary to go far beyond the superficial. Rosberg does not speak only as a commentator. He speaks like someone who knows Lewis Hamilton at his core, like his former partner, as his closest rival. But the SF-25 has demolished that comfort zone. The Italian car, designed by Enrico Cardile, is based on a totally different principle: aggressiveness. Ferrari has created a car with an extremely incisive front axle. In other words, it is a car that turns a lot, very fast, and from very early on. That may seem like an advantage, but it's also a trap. Because in order to control that rotation, the pilot has to rely on a rear axle that is much more unstable. The car wants to enter the corner quickly, but punishes if you don't tame it immediately. It is like a wild feline, powerful, fast, but unpredictable. Does not accept soft corrections. It requires immediate reactions, intuitive decisions, and almost instinctive mastery of oversteer. That's where Hamilton's real problem comes in. It's not that I've forgotten how to drive. It's that SF-25's body language is nothing like the language Hamilton has spoken for 12 years. And when a driver is out of his technical language, even the greatest of them all makes mistakes, hesitates, and loses tense. Nico Rosberg puts it bluntly, Lewis developed his confidence in an environment where the rear axle was like an anchor. Now he has to dance with a car that wants to move constantly. It's not an easy transition. It's like asking a classical pianist to improvise jazz live. Rosberg's remark is not a gratuitous attack. It's an honest depiction of one of the biggest adaptation challenges Hamilton has faced in his career. And it's a reminder that even the brightest talent needs time to reconfigure when tools change radically. The problem is not just Hamilton's. It's also a sign that Ferrari, when designing the SF-25, prioritized a driving style that aligns more naturally with Leclerc. Because Charles has grown up with those types of cars. Because Charles, by training, by temperament, by competitive DNA, can survive and thrive in the chaos that the car proposes. This is not simply a case of a driver adapting to a car. It is the clash of two driving philosophies, two schools of thought, one built on absolute control, another based on controlled aggression. Rosberg has lit the spark, but what we are seeing now in Abu Dhabi could be the start of a complete redefinition of Hamilton's legacy at Ferrari. Behind every poorly taken corner, every imprecise braking, every lap that doesn't work, there is something that the data does not show but that defines a driver's performance: confidence. And that is precisely what Hamilton has been progressively losing since he got into the SF-25. The irony is that the majority of the public and even some superficial analysts blame the car, the team, the media pressure. But as Rosberg has exposed without a filter, the real obstacle is much more subtle. It is a disconnect between Hamilton's instinct and the soul of the SF-25. Hamilton's driving style is not simply a preference. It's a direct consequence of a decade at Mercedes, where every micro-detail of the car was built to suit. In Brackley, the car responded smoothly. There was a linearity between the steering wheel input, the chassis response, and the behavior of the tires. Hamilton could read the car like a sheet of music, executing each corner with a combination of technique and pace that turned each stint into a work of precision. But the SF-25 breaks that harmony. It is a car that requires improvisation. What a reward for daring. That doesn't give you room to think twice. For Hamilton, that type of car represents a betrayal of his identity as a driver. He is used to anticipating, not reacting. He's used to making control his lethal weapon, not fighting with a rear axle that threatens to go away in every fast corner. This difference in approach is what Rosberg calls the clash of philosophies. And it's important to understand that this isn't a simple adaptation issue, like changing a button on the steering wheel or adjusting a differential setting. It is a profound change of mentality. To pilot a Ferrari SF-25 well, the driver needs to embrace the chaos, accept that the car will never be completely stable, and use that volatility to his advantage. That, for a driver with Leclerc's reflexes and experience, who has grown up in aggressive single-seaters from the ranks, may be natural. For Hamilton, it's like relearning how to drive from scratch. He has humbly admitted this in recent statements. I thought that with his experience, his ability to adapt, and his history, A few sessions would be enough to find the sweet spot of the car. But it has not been like that. He has had to imitate Leclerc's style, copy telemetry, force himself to change his corner entry and exit sequence. And in the process he has begun to drive in a way that is not his own. Not because he wants to, but because he needs it to survive. This change not only affects time performance, it affects the internal perception of the team. It affects the way engineers interpret your feedback. Because when a driver doesn't trust the car, he begins to doubt his own feelings. And when you doubt, your information is no longer clear. That is the real invisible problem. It's not the car. It's not the engine. It's not tire wear. It is the internal reference loss. The moment when the driver no longer knows if it is him or the car. And in a sport like Formula One, where everything is decided in thousandths, that is a silent sentence. Rosberg, by putting this on the table, has brought to light one of the most taboo topics in modern F1. That talent cannot always do everything. That even the best, when removed from their technical ecosystem, can seem human again. And that the difference between a dominant champion and a struggling driver is not always in the car. Sometimes it's in the language hidden between your fingers and the steering wheel. And Lewis, right now, is trying to translate a language he doesn't yet master. On the surface, Ferrari has had moments of brilliance this season. Pole positions, fast laps, podiums. From the outside, the SF-25 looks like a competitive car, perhaps even a title contender if the right conditions are met. But when what is really happening inside the Maranello box is analyzed with a magnifying glass, clear signs of a structural crisis emerge. Not a dramatic or obvious crisis like those of previous years with errors in the pits or reliability failures. This time, the problem is in the philosophy with which the car was designed, and how that philosophy excludes certain drivers. Specifically, 1. Lewis Hamilton. Ferrari built the SF-25 as an aggressive evolution of the SF-24, which already showed a clear bias toward front-end dominant behavior. The logic behind this choice was simple. Optimize qualifying performance and exploit Charles Leclerc's ability to attack corners with surgical precision. In Maranello, they know Leclerc perfectly. They know how it drives, what it takes to get the most out of the car, and how it responds when given a chassis that allows immediate rotation and high steering sensitivity. What few said out loud was that by building a car so geared toward Leclerc's preferences, they left little room for another driving style. And that became a problem from the first moment Hamilton got into the car. Because the aerodynamic structure, mass distribution, braking mapping, and behavior and weight transfer phases were not designed with someone who brakes late and rounds the curve in mind. They were made for a driver who launches the car, pivots quickly, and gets back on the gas aggressively. Hamilton, by nature, seeks stability before attacking. Leclerc, on the other hand, looks for the apex first, even if the car goes to the limit of oversteer. That subtle but decisive difference has become an insurmountable barrier for Lewis. And the most delicate thing is that within the team, this reality is becoming increasingly uncomfortable. Because engineers know it. The data confirms it. The simulators reflect this. But changing the essence of the car to accommodate Hamilton means compromising what makes Leclerc strong. And Ferrari at this moment is not willing to break the internal balance of its technical structure for a single driver, even if that driver is called Lewis Hamilton. The risk would be to dismantle a concept that works for one of the two by trying to make it work for both. The result is a type of crisis that is not seen in the points table, but that is felt in every engineering meeting, in every simulator session, in every technical conversation where the solutions offered do not end up working. Because it is not a fault that can be corrected with a new spoiler or a revised suspension. It is a design with a closed identity. And that identity has been molded for one driver, not two. This type of crisis is the most dangerous for an elite team. Because it doesn't generate headlines, it doesn't attract the attention of the average fan, but it wears on the inside. It breaks morale, divides the development approach, and slowly begins to infect strategic decisions. Ferrari can continue competing at the front. You can win races. But as long as one of its drivers continues to feel alien to the car's DNA, the project will always have an internal fracture. And in a Formula One as tight as the current one, a fracture of this type can cost entire championships. Rosberg not only exposed a technical problem, he put his finger on a political wound within Ferrari. Because in the end, the question underlying all this is as simple as it is brutal. Who rules in Maranello? Is the car made for the team for the best possible performance? Or is it made for Leclerc? And if so, what place does Hamilton have in this equation? What happens in Abu Dhabi could tip that balance. If Hamilton can master the SF-25, if he can finally find that point of convergence between his style and the car's design, if he shows that he can beat Leclerc on equal terms, Then Ferrari will have a foundation on which to build. It will be confirmation that the learning curve was worth it, that the strategic bet makes sense. That 2026, with new technical regulations on the horizon, may be the stage where they finally shine together. What happens in Abu Dhabi will not decide just one race. It can define an era. Because if this chapter ends as it began with disconnection, frustration, and intermittent results, the story that will be constructed will not be one of bravery, but of strategic error, sports incompatibility, of a failed attempt to force greatness where perhaps there was never fertile ground to sow it. Leave me your opinion in the comments what you think about all this.